kobolds, how do they work? Well, today we're going to find out with my foolproof guide of how to have a successful kobold run. So the first question really is on which kobold to play with. Personally, I'm a firm believer in the redscales. Let's start the game and then I'll explain why. We'll call it, this will be an Iron Man playthrough, because why not? We'll call it, I don't know, first attempt. So that if there is a failed attempt, we can then refer back to this one as the first one. So why do I just prefer redscales to bluescales? There's two reasons essentially. Number one, if we look at the ruler for both nations, our starting ruler as the redscales is a 555, which is really good stats wise. Plus he's strict. He's also cruel, but strict will give us that slight boost that we kind of need because of how trash our normal kobold units are. We can't look at them right now, but we'll look at them in a minute. Whereas if we look at the bluescales, we can see that he's only a 334. He is a tactical genius, but that's not as good as strict. And because we are kobolds, our rulers are going to live for nearly 100, well, more than 100 years, close to 120. So having those high stats for as long as possible is much better than having these lower stats. Plus, because we're not going to stay a monarchy, we are going to transition into a republic as part of the mission tree. Having a good ruler for such a long time up until we transition into the republic, and even after we transition into a republic, he should become a 666 due to long age and elections. So you get the idea. It's better to have a much higher stat ruler than a lower stat ruler, of course. But on top of that, we start behind in tech. Everyone in the world, mostly, starts at a much higher tech rate than us. We start behind both in tech, as you can see, compared to our neighbors. We're 2s, they're 3s, but we also start behind in institutions. We don't have the first institution, feudalism. So we're going to be behind. So getting those points early is important because we need really to catch up with our neighbors as fast as possible to try and bridge the gap from our already weak soldiers and armies compared to theirs. The second reason why I prefer the redscales is because we actually start bordering the gnomes here in Nimskod. So there is an option for us to declare war on these guys immediately at the start of the game and take some of their provinces, which we will try to do if they don't manage to get an ally. If they do get an ally, we'll just focus on bluescales, but if they don't, we will jump them immediately and take these provinces. This has a lot of benefits. We'll immediately gain access to feudalism that we could accept straight away, depending on the cost. We also gain access to this province, which is ironically the province that's going to do most of the heavy lifting in this game as kobolds. This is where most people are going to try and siege your country from and gain access to your lands. This is likely where you're going to fight a lot of your battles and where a lot of the campaign will be decided. The fort here is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting, so gaining control of it early and starting to upgrade it early with kobold traps is better. There is an issue with doing this though. If we take these provinces, we will immediately share a border with Gawed, and getting close to a Gawedi is the last thing we want to do. But it might be an acceptable risk. There is, of course, there's a risk. If we gain a border with Gawed, they might just declare war on us immediately. They might declare war on us in an inopportune moment. But it's probably worth it to get these provinces early. If we can get them early, not get declared on Gawed, and eat bluescales, then we should be in a good position to survive a Gawedi attack. The problem is that if Gawed declares war on us while bluescale still exists, they'll be able to freely move through these provinces by gaining military access from bluescales and be able to access the heart of our country very quickly. Even worse if we're already at war with bluescales when they attack. But we'll see how it goes. I actually have a strategy that I've thought of recently. As kobolds, we're not going to have mages for very long as we transition into a technocracy and lose mages. So my idea is that we will essentially give a lot of privileges out to mages in order to gain access to battle mages, just because they're stronger. They'll give us a chance of spawning a war wizard, as well as giving us access to the battle mages mercenaries. And all of the land and privileges we give them will kind of just come back to us later on once we transition into a technocracy anyway. Personally, I think that what we really need is soldiers early on. Our soldiers kind of suck, so we need to make do with having a lot of them. instead of just having high quality ones. There is an exploit we can use right at the beginning of the game. As you can see, we have access to all of these mercenary companies right at the start here. That's because the game hasn't registered us as a monstrous country yet. You could hire all of these. I'm not going to do that because I feel like it's an exploit and I want to do an unexploited run. But if you're having trouble and you want to hire loads of mercenaries to bridge the gap, which is viable, it can definitely work, just to help you siege down provinces. Like, having mercenaries is very good to help when sieging down provinces in Bluescales, because you want to use your manpower to buff your forts. I won't be doing this, but you can. So we're just going to give out a load of privileges to the mages. Going to give them reduced research regulations, patrons of magic art, where they're going to sell land, and finally we're going to summon the Diet. Ooh, they give us a mission to take Baycod, which is what we want to do, so we'll take that one. And then we're going to give them the Battle Mage Academia, which is going to take a lot of our land away. We only have 5% now, so we're just going to seize some back to boost up to 10%. We're not going to... Money isn't actually going to be that big of an issue as a kobold, but in this early game, of course, it's at its worst. Then we're just going to give some privileges out to the monstrous estates. Now we're about ready to kind of think about our first steps. We're going to wait, well, actually, we're going to spend our immediate manpower to buff our first fort. Before I start doing this, let me explain this a little. So the unique mechanic for these kobolds, blue, red, and green kobolds respectively, is that we can strengthen our forts and turn them into trapped forts, which have they have buffs, obviously. They're also reduced in cost compared to normal forts. The way we do this is we essentially spend manpower to create forts in specific provinces. As you can see, we start with a fort here in Zalvivia as a level 1 makeshift fort. We're going to buff this to a level 2 fort. As you can see, the buffs increase. It doesn't decrease the cost though, but we have to wait a while before we can do this again. We're going to do this immediately, even though it costs 3,000 manpower, because that lets us finish our first mission, which gives us permanent claims on the Gnomish Pass area, plus 100 admin. And we're going to need admin to core all this land and to, of course, tech up. We're not actually going to set a rival just yet. We want to not set Nimscod as a rival because we want them to avoid getting an ally. So anything that can help them not gain an ally is something we want. We're just going to wait a month or so to see what happens with them. As you can see, we've now lost access to all of the mercenaries we did have access to because we've now been registered as monstrous. We now have access to the monstrous rabble and the battle mages. We're going to hire the battle mages immediately and prepare for the invasion of Nimscod. We don't actually start with we're not going to turn our ruler into a general, obviously, because we want him to survive really the whole game. So we are going to make a general. There's a chance he's good, chance he's bad. We'll be risking it all. Just randomize the name a bit for luck. And he's not that good. Not very good. But he does have at least 1 pip in everything, and he has a siege pip, which is going to be helpful. Now let's see, is Nimscod going to ally somebody, or are we going to be able to just jump them straight away? It looks like we're in luck. They haven't managed to ally somebody, so we're going to immediately declare war. Before we do though, we are going to set them as a rival, which should just make taking their land a little easier. Well, not easier, but it will increase the prestige we get from beating them and help us make spy networks, which is what we're going to do. We're then going to get everyone else as a rival, because why not? And we're going to immediately declare war. So our main goal is to take these 4 provinces. If we're lucky, we'll be able to take these islands as well. As you can see, it's going to take a lot of war score. 61. Problem is food in order to gain all these provinces. One of the problems is Nimscod has a better navy and bigger navy than us, so an actual naval invasion of their island is unfeasible in this beginning section. One of the benefits we do have though is Nimscod's entire army is on this island at the start, so we essentially have free reign of the land until they get over here, and we're going to try and capitalize as much as possible on having free access to this territory. What we really want is for Nimskod to transport their army over and start sieging our fort here in Zaldarian and ignore us as we siege down their province here in Rivibob. The worst possible situation would be if they try to fight us because we're weak. It looks like we might be in luck. Their army is immediately ignoring us and our siege, and is going to siege our provinces up here. So now we're in a siege race. This is basically what we wanted. An heir is born. He'll probably never get to see the throne because our ruler's not going to die. We're going to add the edict to increase the strength of this fort. We may cast a spell to make it even better, but I want to hold off doing that if possible. At least for the moment. Now we're just going to wait. Can we win the siege race? I suppose we'll see. Here we've got a random event that can happen as the kobolds. It's not really a random event, there's a scripted amount of them. And unfortunately, this is perhaps the worst event we could have possibly got. So, the first option degrades the level of fort we have in Zazabarg here, which is the last thing we want to do in this situation where it's being sieged down. The other option is we lose some manpower and maybe gain some army tradition, or lose manpower and lose an army tradition. I guess we'll roll on this one. Luckily we gained some army attrition, which is nice, but it's not like our soldiers can fight well anyway. It does look like we're going to win this siege race though. So we've won the siege. It took a little longer than I wanted it to, and now Nimskod is close to actually sieging down our province here. So we're going to immediately jump on them with our army. We should be able to win. Just in case, I'm going to hire this morale advisor to make us a little stronger. So here we go. This is basically the battle that will decide this campaign. If we lose, we'll probably restart. If we win, of course, we won't restart. We have a good chance. If need be, I will call up the soldiers in the castle to help. So here we are. I'm pretty confident here. The Battle Mage mercenaries really help bridge the gap because they have extra shock ability. There we go, we beat them. We're now going to rush them down and stack wipe them. We're close to being, well, we're not close, but hopefully after stack wiping them, they'll be in a much more acceptable position of just giving us all their land. Unless they managed to escape onto the island, that's the worst possible thing. We really wanted to kill them entirely. We might be able to coax them into coming off their island. One thing we do need to keep an eye on is Calderior over here might declare war on the gnomes themselves and try and take their land. It doesn't look like we're going to be able to unseat them. We are getting the ticking war score from winning the battle, so we could just sit and wait and eventually try and catch them. We can always use our navy to try and lure them away. Ooh, we're not going to catch them, unfortunately. We could use our navy to lure their navy away, and then use that chance to jump on them on the island. We're going to try doing that, but we want to be careful. We don't want to lose our navy. We're going to slip past with our navy. This might work. We did it. We managed to wipe out their navy, their small navy. Hopefully we can get to the province before their navy makes it back. We did, and we're going to stack wipe them probably. Yep, there we go. Now they're going to peace out. This is the best possible thing that could have happened. Surely everything will go wrong from here, but we're going to be able to take all of the land we wanted to take. They're going to be left with just their island. So we could immediately embrace feudalism now. I know I'm a little behind on war exhaustion, but I'm going to immediately try and core up all these provinces. We need them cored as fast as possible. Should we embrace now? If we're going to declare war on Bluescales immediately, which means, of course, once we annex them, we're gonna have less land that's got the institution, so it's going to be harder to introduce it. So I think we are going to embrace now. We are then going to hire the monstrous rabble, who you can see now have more soldiers. They have 8. They're going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting with sieging in the Bluescales. Really, we can't afford to waste time, so because Gawed will eventually come for us now. If we're unlucky, even Caldera might declare war on us for our provinces up there. We'll just have to hope that things go our way. We're also going to use some of our manpower immediately to level up the fort here in the now renamed Asgaria. Because if Gawed does declare war on us, we want this fort to be as strong as humanly possible, or as koboldly possible. We actually managed to catch some of Bluescales' fleet. We are going to try and destroy as much of Bluescales' fleet as we can, just because we can steal their ships. And getting those extra ships without having to pay for them is of course nice. We should be able to fully annex the Bluescales in this war. Problem is, this war may take a while because we have to siege down a lot of their provinces. I suppose we'll just have to see how it goes and hope for the best. If we're unlucky, they will attack us and actually defeat us, which may be the end of this run. But surely, it'll be fine. We are going to start going into debt, but that's inevitable and acceptable at this stage. Money isn't going to be an issue in the long term, so going into debt early... Ooh, they're attacking us. Are we going to win? I think we are going to win. It's going to be a little close. Yep, we won. Okay. If we could just siege down this fort now, everything will be fine. If not, everything will not be fine. It's going to be a little close. See, this is one of the problems with fighting Bluescales. I should have let them leave, really. I shouldn't have attacked them here in this fort. I think they are going to attack us again, and we're probably going to lose. Big mistake on my side, though. I should have let them leave and start sieging down our forts instead of trapping them. And yeah, they're going to attack us, unfortunately. This might be the end of this playthrough, because we essentially have no army now. Anyone and everyone could declare war on us, and they probably should. There we go. That's the end of this playthrough. Oh god, this was a perfect run and I wasn't recording any of it. So if you're just watching now, then you may see that we're in a rather poor position, but we're actually in a great position. It's just I forgot to record all this amazing progress we've been making. We managed to just completely annihilate the gnomes, take all their territory except for Nimrod, for Nim's Cod even. We then fought the Bluescales. While we were doing so, we were declared war by Gawedi. Now we're just sitting back, letting Gawedi siege our lands. And, well, we're going to try and jump them because they are actually doing quite well. Real problem is this siege where they've got all 30,000 men, but having so many men on the siege, they should bleed out really fast. Right, we're going to try and fight this siege. I don't like how he's got reinforcing armies, though. Maybe let's not even bother. Let's think about going for this bigger stack. I know there's 30,000 of them. But, ooh, us coming up here has caused him to pull his armies back. If he pulls them all the way round, let's wait a few moments. Wait a few brief moments. And then we're going to swoop down right now and try and catch this southern stack. He's feeling it. His allies have run. We're getting them. This might actually be a wipe. Oh no, almost. Now we're going to swoop around the other side and try and save this castle before it falls. Should be easy because he's pulled back all his armies. There's just his vassals' army here now. And we gained the event that gives us an extra... Oh yeah, that was a stack wipe on the vassal. Not as useful as a stack wipe on Gawedi's, obviously. Really, we want to kill as many Gawedis as possible so his vassals become disloyal and then quit the field. So killing his vassals' armies is actually the opposite of what we want to do, but it's not like we can choose what we want. Sometimes we just gotta roll with the punches. We're at 10 war score right now. What we want from this war really is we want war reparations plus as much money as we can squeeze out of them to pay off our loans that we've had to stack up during the conflict. Overall, things are going pretty well. It'd be nice if we could get his vassals, his allies, to quit the field and leave the war, but I don't think we're going to be able to do that. We've reached the next faith level, so we're just going to grab... Should we grab extra fort defense? Yeah, we're going to grab that instead of war exhaustion decreasing, because we can't decrease it enough, essentially, to make it so the war exhaustion disappears. Gawed is out of No, they're almost out of manpower, though. Should we take this fight up here? He's got around Go around, yeah, 24,000 men. Ooh, well, he's pulling back some of his guys. There could be rebels are spawning in his territory, and that's why he's pulling back his forces to fight them. We're actually going to attack this southern siege, which his ally is sieging. There's two reasons for that. One, we want his ally to quit the war, so dealing casualties of tools to them will help. Ah, perfect, a stat quite. His ally now has low war enthusiasm. We're going to make them quit the field immediately. There they go. Now it's just Gawed and his vassals in the conflict. That's perfect. Now he won't be able to rely on his allies to siege things down for him. He'll have to do it himself. He of course still has his allies, but his vassals, but they're simply not as good. We're now going to try and snap this northernmost army. Really, we need to, because it's close to sieging down the fort. It should be an easy win, though. Yep, perfect. How close are we to getting him to give us all his money? We're still quite far. He's still at medium war enthusiasm, though. Just a little bit more sieging of his armies, and a little more attrition should reduce his manpower even further. He is using mercenaries at this point, though, so attrition won't be as effective. I should actually be using my army to try and annihilate his vassals' armies. One of them has a war galley, so it'd be nice if we could steal that. Go and start offering peace. They're not offering enough money for my likings, though. We gained an heir. He'll probably never sit on the throne just because our ruler will survive the entire time until we become a technocracy. They're at the cusp of war enthusiasm reaching the negatives. We just got to hold out a little longer. Although I say hold out, but things have been going pretty perfect. This siege needs to be rescued, though. Should I rescue it, or should I just take peace? 700 gold versus 800 gold. It might be... I think it's better to just take the 700 gold. We're going to do it. There we go. We defeated Gawed. No one thought it was possible. We're going to use all our money to immediately pay off all of our loans. Let's get some of the diet. Seize land. He just wants to build a fort here. Is this a trap kobold province? It is. Yes. So we're going to accept this. We're going to use our manpower to build the fort essentially for free at half price. Now we're just going to do nothing. It's one of those moments. We've pretty much won. We've pretty much had a successful kobold run. We just need to finish off the Bluescales. Gawed's warned us, but that's fine. That won't apply to a Bluescales war because Bluescales is inside of our own territory. We just need to finish off Nimsgod and the Bluescales, and we're pretty much there. We've done it. Gawed can never really successfully invade our country. Now they've failed this first invasion, they'll essentially fail every other one, because we can just do the exact same thing. And as time passes, our forts are only going to get stronger. One thing you should always remember to do is turn off your fort edicts. Otherwise they're just going to cost you money. And you can, since turning them off doesn't stop you just immediately turning them off on again, there's no reason not to turn them off when you're not at war. Because if worse comes to worse, you can just immediately turn them back on if a war is declared on you, even after you suddenly get rid of them. Right, truce is up with the Bluescales. We're gonna immediately jump them. They don't really have much of an army now at this point. What I want to hang back a bit and let them come in, siege our fort here. They might not even attempt it. It doesn't look like they want to attempt it. Oh well. Well, actually, they've got a big... They're actually just going to run. They're not even going to try and fight us. I guess we are a tech ahead of them now. Well, actually, no, we're at equal techs. But we've been able to embrace feudalism. We are close to teching up in the next militech. Okay, so let's just use our large army to just start sieging through their forts. Fortunately, they are good forts because, of course, they are also kobolds. We have a good general with 3 siege pips? 2. And that's going to let us get through this fort rather quickly. Yeah, Bluescales can't even oppose us. We stack wipe them easily. We're going to be able to piece them out without having to even siege down their capital. There we go. And there, in one move, we are now the only kobold nation left in this side of the world. Which I believe means there are 3 kobold nations left in total. How awful. So now it's just a simple matter of going down our mission tree. Gawed will almost definitely come for us again, but it will actually be to our advantage. We're basically just going to use Gawed as a money bag that we beat up and take their money. Nimsgod might be a bit of a problem, although they've ended up in a trade alliance with Port Nanman. Port Naman? Not sure. Nam. Maybe just Port Nam. Anyway, they're in a trade deal alliance with them, which means they won't get any big allies. But their navy is still a problem. We definitely need to get a larger navy. We still don't have much of an income though. Although I could just disband our mercenaries. I'm a little cautious too. I like having them, for the moment at least. Some of our forts we could demolish, but again, I like having them, especially if they're trapped forts. If they're non-trapped forts, I would get rid of them straight away. But since they are trapped forts, I'd rather keep them for the long term. Really, I just prefer to let my manpower replenish for a while before we attempt to finish off Nimskod. We don't actually need to take the green scale lands. Our mission tree doesn't require us to, at least not just yet. What we do need to do is get a level 4 trap fort, or have a level 2 trap fort in the green scale lands to complete this mission. So I said if we just get a level 2 trap fort, a level 4 trap fort somewhere, then we'll essentially be done with that mission. These mercenaries are all also pretty useful for clearing up the rebels that spawn through our country. That way we don't have to use our actual army and manpower to do it. We can just leave it to the rebels. We can just leave it to the mercenaries even. Since we have some free time now, let's talk about the Kobold Horde. Horde even. So this is a unique mechanic for the kobolds. We have a giant pile of gold essentially in this province. Currently has 100 gold in it. As you put gold in, you essentially get bigger and bigger bonuses as it gets to each tier of gold. As you can see, the next tier will be at 500 gold. Personally, I'm pretty cheap, so I don't like putting too much gold into this pile of gold, even though it is a cultural thing that we're supposed to do. You can get bonuses for doing it, depending on the amount you put in. For example, if you put in, I think, 1,000 gold, you gain 1 stability outright. Whereas if you put in the minimum amount of 250 gold, you'll only get 10% chance of a stability. Honestly, stability isn't going to be that big of a thing in this campaign though, because we're going to transition into a technocracy and who won't lose stab on ruler deaths. So we can basically just never lose stability after a certain point. I think we're actually going to call it there for this run. This has pretty much been the perfect run. We'd smashed Galwed, we smashed Bluescales. Of course, it would have been a little more better if we'd been able to kill Bluescales without Galwed's involvement, but I think it was actually better to make peace with the Bluescales, taking just these provinces instead of investing more manpower into conquering the rest of it, and then using our forces to fight Galwed, and then just cleaning up the Bluescales at our leisure. I actually think it was much better just taking these 5 or so provinces and then using those to defeat Galwed. We're in a pretty good position overall. We can just freely go down our mission tree now. It'd be nice if we could grab these provinces later on, but we could grab them much later on if we wanted to. We do need to finish off Nimskod, but it should be pretty easy, just because his only ally is Portman, who will essentially will beat Portman on the lands, and then we'll have to take the island. But we have a lot of money, and we actually have a good income right now, which is shocking. But as I keep saying, kobolds will actually be a very profitable campaign. You're going to make a lot of money. So if we just build up a slightly bigger navy and fight Nimrod and take the island, then we're all good. Nothing to stop us forming Kobolitsa. In fact, we don't actually need to do anything to form Kobolitsa at this point, just reach Admin 7. For ideas, I have a few recommendations. Number 1, you're going to need to be doing a lot of colonizing as part of your mission tree, and it's intended you start colonizing as quickly as possible. So I think I would recommend your first idea be exploration, and then your second idea expansion. You can drop these ideas later on in the campaign once you've colonized as much as you need to, or once the world has been colonized to the point where there's nothing left to colonize. But I would definitely recommend them as your first 2 ideas, just because you're really intended to colonize, but on top of that, the amount of money you make from colonizing will basically just jumpstart your nation incredibly. As the Dragon Coast, as you can see, it has a branch which goes off into the New World. So it's very easy to pull trade here. And once you conquer these few provinces along the coast, you'll be getting all essentially of the money that flows this way, because as you can see, there's actually very few provinces in the Dragon's Coast, and we own nearly all of them. The ones we don't own are these ones up here, and these ones down here in Rivernia. That's basically what it is. It's Riveria, and Port Nan, of course. So I definitely recommend colonizing, not just because it's part of your mission tree, but due to the profit of doing so. For your third idea, I personally abide by the one idea from each group as a house rule. So for the third idea, I definitely recommend either defensive or quantity, just to strengthen your forts even more. It's not really possible to strengthen your army because of how weak... I mean, well, you can, right? But, like, kobolds start with -5 morale, -10 shock, -20 cavalry cost, -20 cavalry galley combat ability. The main benefit kobolds actually have is fire. They're strong against fire damage. But in this early stage of the game, where everyone's using shock, you're a lot weaker, and you take a lot more damage to shock. Later on in game, where we start making artifactor regiments and start being able to lean into our strengths of being good with shock, essentially, good with fire, essentially, then the kobolds can get better. But in this early stage, I don't feel it's really worth like going into something like offensive. Sure, it can kind of bridge the gap, or to by making your army slightly better, but it won't get rid of that extra damage you're going to take from shock. You can take defensive. One of the reasons I do is because it will counteract the negative morale. It will give you +15 morale and it will take away this +5 and essentially give you 10. But between defensive and garrison, it's really up to you. Personally, I prefer defensive just because of this max hostile attrition and max +1 for attrition for enemies, plus garrison size being increased by 32%, plus your forts being decreased by 25% cost. I mean, it's all pretty good. Our forts are already -50% cost with just by default if they're trap forts. So getting the fort mentality, defense mentality from defensive will make your forts -75% in cost, which is pretty amazing. Basically, with defensive, you'll be able to build loads of forts, and they won't really cost you any money. So you can just sink your money into everything else. Quantity, on the other hand, is more about if you just want to build bigger and bigger armies. It doesn't really benefit your forts much, but it's really up to you because your forts are already going to be strong. Defense is if you want to make your forts even stronger, which I personally prefer. But if you want to make your army bigger and stronger, then I'd recommend quantity. I think it's actually worth taking both at some point in the campaign. For other ideas, I think religious is pretty good, as you're going to be conquering a lot of land that isn't your religion, and you're going to be your religion for the entire game, and you're basically the only country that follows it. So being able to convert is definitely important. You're probably not going to have many vassals outside of certain missions and your colonies, so I'm not sure I recommend influence, but diplomatic's probably good because you're going to be your only country of your religion. You're going to get a lot of aggressive expansion from conquering. Plus, you are monstrous. You will likely need to demonstrize at some point, but you cannot. I do think it might be viable not to demonstrize. For a similar reason, I think going mercenary heavy can actually be a good idea. I've never tried it, but a lot of, as you've seen, you use manpower to build your forts. So what about if instead of using manpower for armies, we use them for our forts and just focused on using mercenaries? If you did decide to go that mercenary route, you would definitely want to demonstrize, because as a monstrous nation, you only have access to these couple of monstrous mercenary companies. Either way, though, I think this is pretty much the perfect situation you could be in, because if Goward does declare war on us again, we've managed to start trapping our forts. So as you can see, this fort is now has a 75% fort defense, and that's before we've even triggered our defensive edict, and before we've cast a spell, which I would recommend casting magic if you do. I can't right now because my influence for my mages has dropped really low. But there's two spells. One's that gives your capital 100% fort resistance, and one that gives, I think, a few of your forts. I can't remember if it's all of them, but a few of them. It might be based on the amount of influence your mage has, but it gives them an extra 50% fort defense. So I definitely recommend firing that up on if your forts are getting sieged and you just want to give them that extra oomph of defensiveness, and just do as I did and just take the chances to snipe armies that are separate and on their own, that you outnumber, who've taken attrition. As I said, I don't recommend making your ruler a general. Just leave him as a 5/5/5. He's probably going to be a 6/6/6 by the time he dies anyway, so just let him be. He's also strict, which is nice. Cruel isn't that great, but it does have some good events with it, so which you can take advantage of. All right, let me know if you want me to, if you have any questions about this run, if there's a strategy that you have that you think is better than mine. I do think a lot of people swear by Bluescales, and I don't think it's worse necessarily. I just really like being able to nab these provinces right at the beginning as redscales. Sure, it puts you in Gawed's firing line. Sure, it means that you have to fight through Bluescales' caverns to get into the country, but just being able to embrace feudalism straight away and then being able to tech up much faster is really nice. Like if we look at our tech compared to everybody else, sure, we're a little yellow, but only a little. The only tech we're behind in really is mill and admin. And that's because, you know, we've been coring a lot, but we're just about to tech up in both mill and admin. The only reason Riveria is ahead of us really is because they've actually embraced the Renaissance. And since we're going to be behind in tech quite a bit because we're monstrous and people aren't going to want to sell to us tech to us, so it's good to get up in tech as fast as possible. We can of course dev for tech, but I wouldn't recommend it in this early stage where we need it to tech up. We need our tech to tech up because our armies are weaker, and being behind in tech makes them even weaker. But I do think Bluescales I think it has an easier early game, but a slightly more difficult post-early game, like not really mid-game, but just like immediately after the early game. Because let's say you play as Bluescales, you conquer redscales, then suddenly where do you go next? You want to invade Nimrod, but he's probably allied a bunch of people. And yes, I do accidentally keep calling him Nimrod and not Nimscod. I just can't help it. And sure, you don't share a border with Gawed as Bluescales, but eventually Gawed will absorb these people and gain a border with you. So either you're going to have to attack Nimrod where they have potentially a bunch of other allies, which I mean, it's not that bad. Not that bad. Depends who they ally. If you're really unlucky, they'll ally someone really powerful and make your life hellish. But I do think Bluescales is a more leisurely playthrough. I just really prefer having a better leader for the points with better traits. So yes, let me know if you want to see a part 2. I'm not sure if I really want to do a part 2, but I could play further and really show off the overall strategies that I have for this nation. Is there another nation, either in this mod or another mod or in the main game, that you'd like me to attempt to show a good way to play it? I know I haven't really shown off very much in this playthrough how good I am at the game, but I'm rather competent, I suppose. I just did a Zoka and the gnolls that go native, as it were, and perform their own Egyptian dynasty, and those were pretty great campaigns that I didn't really have much trouble with. So if there's a nation that you want to see, that you want advice on, you want me to do a strategy, do my own run through and show it off, or you just want me to play, it might be fun, then don't hesitate to let me know. I'm theory crafting my current strategies for Kashgar, I think they're called, the nation that starts right next to the command and is especially supposed to fight them in a death war and just win. So I'll keep working on that one, and eventually maybe once I have a finished strategy for it, I'll show it off. Anyway, thank you for watching and see you next time.